All right, hi everyone. This feels weird holding a microphone. I'm not used to this, but we'll get used to it. I'm Dr. Melissa Avdeeff. I'm going to talk to you about maybe not mastering the algorithm, because I think that's a question that everyone has, but definitely giving a bit of a primer about it and starting to talk about some of the main questions that are unfolding around AI and music. That's why I was brought here today, asked to talk about this, because my research area is AI and music. So thanks for being here. Anyone who's been on social media platform, any streaming service, knows that, I want to say, the algorithm can seem like this all-seeing, fully aware thing that dominates our lives. Even myself, after just not too long on TikTok, it's pinned me as this elder millennial who wants to probably destroy the patriarchy, has probably a whole host of neurodiversities, maybe, or not, and really likes screaming huskies. My Spotify list has converged to the point where usually 3 of the 6 playlists it sends me are almost identical. And there are niche TikTok groups out there that speak about algorithms as if they are a religion or some sort of spiritual entity. But there is a lot of misperceptions around what artificial intelligence and algorithms are, which is why I'm here today, with many people turning to popular culture for the basis of how they understand AI. A Bloomberg study, for example, found that 58% of respondents get their knowledge about AI from popular culture, such as movie, films, and social media, and also that people most often associated AI with things like anthropocentric robots and self-driving cars, and not the kind of mundane existence and relationship that we have with algorithms just on our day-to-day experience. So while we don't have functional robots or functional robot assistants or self-driving cars yet, algorithms have become deeply ingrained into most aspects of our lives. In fact, AI scholar Pedro Domingo says that if every algorithm suddenly stopped working, it would be the end of the world as we know it. This does feel a bit, reactionary. It kind of reminds me of the discourse that was happening around Y2K, if you're old enough to remember this, but I guess we'll see how this does unfold in the future. But with that in mind, over the next few minutes, I'll provide a brief overview around what algorithms are. But before looking at 3 impacts, I'll give an overview of what they are before looking at 3 impacts within the music industry and creative sectors at large around consumption, musical taste, and content production. So first, what is an algorithm? There are what I would like to call actual kind of dictionary definitions of the term and also social definitions. And social being how the term has evolved within mainstream usage, how the media, both traditional and social media, have influenced our knowledge and perception around algorithms and AI. And as with most technology, we can look at algorithms as a neutral concept, but in practices, as we've seen a lot in the news lately, they can contain biases as well. They are consistent when put into practice, but they do not understand context and nuance in the way that humans approach a task or undertake any sort of creative production. So when defining algorithms, there are 3 main terms I want to draw attention to. Algorithms, of course, but also machine learning and neural networks. Because when we talk about the social understanding of algorithms, it is most often machine learning that we are actually referring to, whether we know that or not. So a bit of a breakdown here. Algorithms, they are at the basic level just a set of instructions designed to solve a specific problem. Some sort of step-by-step procedure that always produces the same output with the same input. They are most often associated with computers as the sort of invisible infrastructure that we utilize as internet users. But at the basic level, it could be any sort of instructions. Like a recipe could be an algorithm because it's a step-by-step guide in order to produce something, ideally something tasty like a cake. Or those of you who have done any sort of music training in your life, any sort of classical training, and you've encountered those charts that kind of tell you like which chord should go next, 5 to, I can't remember, it's been so long. But any time you've encountered those, it's not particularly an algorithm, but that kind of expectation of what chord comes next could be used as the basis for an algorithm in music production. Machine learning, a subset of AI that involves training a computer algorithm to learn from data and make predictions on its own. So we often hear about these types of algorithms being referred to as a black box because it's not something we can really break apart and get a good understanding of what's actually going on within them because the system is learning on its own and generating new algorithms from the data that it has access to. So we don't always have a great sense of what is actually occurring within that process. So yeah, it does become kind of like I can see why people would have those religious and spiritual kind of associations with it because of this unknown, because of this kind of autonomy that we see there. And then finally, neural networks are a type of algorithms or machine learning that are really inspired by the function of the human brain and the way that it is interconnected with neurons or nodes. And these are really great algorithms to do very complex problem solving, like speech recognition or visual language recognition. But the way that we kind of talk about algorithms in the day-to-day is that social meaning. They've really become, algorithm as a term or a concept, really become a shorthand for all types of artificial intelligence phenomenon, that underlying very contextual meaning of the term. We've even got to the point where a lot of scholars, within academia, refer to the whole kind of process of algorithm curation and recommendation systems, whether it's Netflix or Spotify, as algorithmic culture, the kind of culture that we exist in today because of how ingrained they've become into our daily lives. And how much, because of this, they've influenced the way that we value certain types of music or value certain types of artistic outputs. Okay, so let's talk about the three influences it's had. Now that we have a very, very basic understanding of what algorithms are, let's think about how it's influenced how we consume music, how we produce music, and how we listen to it. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to focus on Spotify for the most part. It is the widest used streaming service for music at the moment, and many of you have probably experienced either trying to get on the playlist, so your music gets kind of sent to other people more often, or how we listen to music in our everyday, going through those daily mixes that are created for us. But I also want to make it clear that the algorithm on Spotify, it also is very much dependent on human data beyond yourselves and your own kind of platform as well. For example, your playlists aren't just produced based on your activities in the platform or the app, but your position in relation to other users, other key users who are kind of identified as key users within the system. So the idea being that if you are kind of positioned in relation to one of these key users because you have similar listening styles, they'll say, okay, well, you guys have a lot in common, so we'll look at this key user's other playlists to see what they've created and kind of mine those to say, well, if you like that, you'll probably also like this based on your kind of similar listening profile. But these algorithms are also shaping how music is valued, both in kind of monetary, like capitalist ways, but also social ways as well. And this, combined with other kind of key algorithms like TikTok and the For You page, we've seen a lot about how what becomes trending on TikTok ultimately becomes trending on Spotify and then the top 10 list and so on and so forth. It's had a really drastic effect on the way that people consume and their listening habits. So thinking about our taste, although platforms like Spotify were meant to democratize music for artists, the kind of process, it's becoming increasingly clear that the system is deeply flawed. And a lot of these long-standing unequal power relationships in society are just being perpetuated and sometimes even enhanced on these platforms. So for example, there have been some studies, I'll share some kind of academic studies that I've come across. There's been studies that found that Spotify tends to recommend male artists more often than female, showing that there has been some sort of bias inserted somewhere in the process, most likely to do with the data that it's being trained on in order to make those recommendations. But we could kind of see that maybe it's upholding an ideal that, male is de facto in the industry. And another study has shown that the more that someone relies on those algorithmically curated playlists, the less diverse they tend to have in their listening profile. So it makes sense. So as, if the algorithm is consistent and always, has a similar outcome for similar input, the algorithm identifies that, you like a particular artist, genre, and it's almost too good at its job. It will just give you more and more of the same because it feels like it's succeeding. It's like, I'm being very successful. I'm giving you what you like. I'm just giving you a tremendous amount of what you like. And it kind of doesn't take into account the diversity of listening that occurs in more organic forms of choice. There's a lot of same conversations happening right now with ChatGPT. I'm assuming everyone here has at least tried out GPT at some point. But there's a lot of debate around whether it's going to standardize, how it's kind of making writing very formulaic and very sterile. And maybe the Spotify kind of music generation could go in that way as well. The Spotify algorithms kind of drill down your taste, standardize it as much as possible, and really ignore a lot of that diversity and novelty and anomalies that occur in our general kind of music discovery or lack of discovery. So how do we remove ourselves from this? It's very difficult. I mean, you as musicians are probably more likely to seek out novelty and kind of widen your music profile. But for many people, because of their sheer kind of how much music and content is available, people just increasingly rely on those playlists in order to kind of curate their musical listening. My Spotify, this is not my Spotify rap, but mine often looks like this, where it's just like the top 5 songs are just one artist over and over again. Okay, so as AI moves into the mainstream, or AI music production moves into the mainstream, we are so close to that watershed moment right now. There will be, no doubt, very similar debates as what we're seeing with AI art and its watershed moment a few months ago with DALL-E and Stable Diffusion, Midjourney. So a lot of questions come up. Will it be a tool to increase creativity and novelty? Will it be used to speed up the creative process, further standardize music sounds with some sort of form of outcome homogenization, as with ChatGPT? We have already seen a lot of artists try to game the algorithms on platforms like Spotify and TikTok through things like decreasing the length of their songs, focusing on quick hooks, at potentially the loss of a larger narrative structure in people's music. So it is a bit hard to see how this will play out in the long term, but I do think there's already been a wider shift of how people even understand music within social media platforms. Instead of just being music, as it has always existed as a separate form, it's almost becoming wrapped up in these wider definitions and understandings of content just more broadly. So speaking of platforms, I'm not going to go into details about AI musicians or musicians who are using AI in their work, partly for copyright reasons, because it's no fun not being able to play their music. But I do want to introduce you to some of the platforms, particularly the free ones, that you can use if you want to start getting involved, trying it out, seeing if it works within your creative process as well. And these kind of platforms are particularly useful for people who want to explore music production, who may not have a background in music or coding or even any sort of digital technology. And for those of you who need any sort of royalty-free music for YouTube, TikTok, podcasts, other sort of audiovisual formats, or even as the basis for that iterative process to generate ideas, to go back and kind of see what you can and cannot insert into your own production. So as I said, there's a lot of variety in the platforms that are available as well. Anything from stem separation to mastering to drum quantization. But the 3 I want to show you are more kind of holistic, more in the generative, where you can just press a button and a song will emerge for you. And generally speaking, just for some background, they all have different pricing levels with various degrees of levels of ownership or what you can do for monetization with them. So just keep that in mind if you check them out. So the first one, Ava, probably the most well-known in this space at the moment. And interestingly, they're the first one that were able to get copyright protection as an AI algorithm. So this one, you can create custom tracks in a variety of genres and with parameters around mood, tempo, length, and so on. So just an example, I'm going to let you know that I spent literally no time creating these. So as musicians, you could probably spend a lot more time fine-tuning these productions. But just as an aside, I made this one by selecting Fantasy Wave, edited it into a minor key, made some other minor adjustments, and this is what we came up with. Personally, I think it's not as consistent in the quality as Ava, but Ava has been around much longer and has a giant team behind it. Ultimately, you do have to pay to download the tracks, but I did get around that today to show you this one that I selected global beats and then further summer vibes on top of that. So here we go. Soundful. This one pitches itself as a platform to create infinite loops, and also as a template for content creators. So they're really trying to use that kind of YouTube podcast, audiovisual background track market. This one as well, you can search by genre, mood, artist, and then make some alterations like key and BPM. This one that I'll show you here, I selected chill as my first prompt, and then dreamy. And then I also edited this one into a minor key, because I guess I was in a minor mood when I was creating these slides. But let's listen to the soundful one. All right, so hopefully that's been a very quick rundown of algorithms are and how they're used in different aspects of music consumption, content production and taste, and how you can kind of start playing around with these platforms. They are a lot of fun. If you haven't tried them yet, I definitely encourage you to do so. And this is barely touching the surface about what's out there in regards to algorithms and AI, and especially what's going to be on the horizon in the very near future. So if you do have any questions, I am happy to chat. I'm around the conference. You can reach out to me through email, Twitter, so on and so forth. But yeah, thanks everyone, and look forward to talking to you guys all about this a bit more. Thanks.